Hi, I'm Lindsay, and welcome to my magical journeys. My creative journeys. In this video, I'm going to share a love letter to Microsoft and that I'm done. I'm breaking away from Microsoft. There's one or two applications that I can't live without that are still going to be on Windows, but other than that, I'm done. The experience I've had is just horrible at the moment. I can't get stuff done. I've got crashes all the time, but I'll cover that later. But for now, a little love letter. So I've been doing software for many years, over 30 years. I've been using computers since I was a toddler, and I was using DOS 5. That's how long ago this is. And throughout the years, DOS 5, DOS 6.22, Windows 3.1 NT, 95, 98, you name it, all the way through to Windows 11 now. I've experienced it all, and there's been bumps in the road along the way, but right now, I've never had such a horrible experience with Microsoft. There's serious privacy concerns. There was always a bit of privacy concern in the background, but now it's just completely open and up front, and I'm not happy about it at all. Initially, my time with Microsoft has been in DOS. Sure, there are a couple of apps, but it was, let's face it, it was for gaming. And even as far as Windows 95, 98, those periods, there was a bit of programming, but the majority of it was for gaming. And then we got to Windows 2000, and that's when the development and the even using Office became a serious thing. I was like old enough to be using Office all the time, and went through the humble beginnings of .NET and where that took us. At the time, Borland was the main competitor. It had a very good suite of products as well, but it came under pressure and took a different path. So Microsoft has always been there. When I started university, though, I was introduced to Linux and found that there was a lot of things that you could do with Linux. It wasn't quite on par with Windows, but you could do an awful lot with it. And there was a lot of things, especially as a developer, that it was much better for doing compared to Microsoft. Then, as I started my career, there was a significant push to Linux, and at the time, Mepis and Antix, based off Debian distros, were my distros of choice. CentOS and Ubuntu were also there. They definitely played a part. But Windows was kind of always the main machine. Like, I was running VMs for a long time there on a Windows machine to leverage the benefits of Linux, and it was a good setup. Like, Microsoft had that accessibility to everything. Office still had a major play. LibreOffice was coming around. OpenOffice, they were there, but they were just a little bit off. And this is before those open standards, so the DocX, XSLX standards, and yeah, it was pretty good. In my future career, I moved to Windows, into a Microsoft house, and it was pretty good, but I learnt that the quirks were there. There were a lot of things that I needed to work around. It was workable. The compatibility with all the main players out there with their software and so forth, they were still there. But as far as using Microsoft and getting away with it, yeah, definitely all there. And that continued throughout my career. Windows 8 was a dog's breakfast. I especially, tried it and just couldn't go over it. And in fact, that timing is that the experience I had with Windows 8 is on par with Windows 11. Keep that in mind. We'll circle around back to that. 8.2 came out, beautiful. It was a fantastic operating system, could do everything we needed to do. The user interface was a bit different, but it was still usable. Coming through to Windows 10, and it's just a wonderful operating system, just on all fronts. Whether it's a desktop experience, the equivalent server versions, the IoT versions of Windows 10 were fantastic. It was just a go-to. Windows 7, I didn't mention Windows 7, but Windows 7 was the staple for a long time there, and but before Windows 8, and it was that feeling of Windows 7 again. Everything just worked. Everything was backwards compatible. Everything worked. It had quirks, but that was okay. We could work with those quirks. It's the same thing for Windows 10, except it was better. Those workarounds weren't needed anymore. The quirks weren't there. Everything, when things were described, it was generally as described. There was no crashes. I don't recall the last Windows 10 crash I had. In fact, there were some, but it was to do with graphics card drivers. It's one of those things where it's a temporary pain, but Microsoft, as far as I'm aware, wasn't quite the issue at play. And I do know that people had issues with some motherboards and CPUs and so forth as well, and that caused Windows crashes as well. But yeah, Windows 10 was very good. Fast forward to this year, I decided to hold off on upgrading to Windows 11 for a long time. Half of it was actually Microsoft's doing. My CPU is i5 9600, and so it just missed out on that upgrade progression. And then earlier this year, that range of CPUs were opened up, and it was September 2025. I decided, okay, with these security issues, it was time to upgrade and see what we were working with. And from the standpoint of getting it updated, there weren't any problems, but I was experiencing crashes every half day. It was just unmanageable. I did my best to go through debug and resolve those issues to no avail. And ultimately, I was forced to do a full clean update or full clean install of Windows 11. So going through the process and making sure everything was backed up, and having all the software that I needed to. And when I jumped into Windows 11 with a clean install, things were better, but they still weren't amazing. There was still crashes every other day of the week. It's so frustrating when you're trying to get things done and the experience that you have from a development activity or an office activity like MS Office, or like there was just no stopping it. And so there was a lot of time wasted having to restart, recoup, and get back to where I was before.